Well, things are now really heating up for Ukraine, and not actually in a good way. What started as a global sympathy wave is now turning into a queue of countries knocking at Kyiv's door, asking for a payback. And honestly, watching Zelensky and his crew scrambling is starting to look more like a political sitcom than a wartime diplomacy. The first slap came from none other than Donald Trump. The guy didn't hold back, and he made it crystal clear. If Ukraine wants more American money, it's better to cough up something real in return. And so the result was a flashy rare earth mineral deal that gave US a preferential access to Ukraine's natural resources. Trump celebrated it like a victory parade, calling it a smart way to make America recoup the billions it has sunk into Ukraine since 2022. But now it's not just Uncle Sam that is banging the table. It is the ripple effects that are now starting. Say hello to Slovakia, viewers. Yep, a country that once stood firmly behind Ukraine is now eyeing its own compensation. According to the Slovak news agency TASR, the lawmakers of the Slovakia's ruling coalition are now planning to demand that Ukraine repay them for the military and financial aid sent during the war with Russia. Leading the charge is Andrej Danko, the boss of the Slovak National Party, and he wants the Slovak PM, Robert Fico, to push the EU into action. Something similar to what the US pulled off. Danko's office, via spokesperson Zuzana Skopkova, confirmed that they are going to demand the EU that it gets serious about its stake in the Ukrainian mineral production. Skopkova didn't mince words. She called out the US deal with Ukraine as illogical and unethical if the European Union is absent from the deal. Now let's look at the numbers. According to the European Commission, the EU has provided around 158 billion euros in military and financial support to Ukraine. Well, that is the official figure. The unofficial figure is quite larger than what is anticipated. And still, the Americans have only inked a mineral agreement. Europe, well, it is still waiting. So now Slovakia is demanding its piece of the pie. The SNS wants more than 3 billion euro aid to be repaid, and ideally through a deal like the one Ukraine signed with the US. Danko is even asking the Slovak finance minister Ladislav Kamenicki to calculate every euro and bullet they sent over so they can submit a proper invoice. And here's the kicker. Under Robert Fico's leadership, Slovakia has already turned off the aid tap. Fico has been a vocal critic of the EU policy on Ukraine, and last May he also survived an assassination attempt by a pro-Ukraine activist. So yeah, the gloves are actually off. Interestingly, the EU isn't starting from zero here. Back in 2021, before the war started, Brussels signed a raw mineral agreement deal with Ukraine. The European Parliament think tank stated that the agreement technically gives the EU a stake in the mineral deal. But with the US now in the front row access, that old EU deal is looking pretty dusty. And so a new deal is the need of the hour. So with much foreign aid pouring, over the past 3 years, the countries are now beginning to treat the situation like a loan rather than a gift. And Kyiv, well, it's got fewer and fewer cards to play. At this rate, Ukraine might end up becoming the next Africa, rich in resources but stripped of its own control. All because a war-hungry president decided that the show must go on.